3rd of July. We had made up amongst us and made up during the week before to go that day, so we go together. 36 of us, and 7 of them were from our farm. We'd sneak out at nights and get together. Of course, they had men watching us, so we wouldn't get together and get to plot. So we had to sneak off into the woods to meet together. My wife stayed there until we came back to Rock Island to guard prisoners. And then she came. And when we went south again, we were mustered out in 65. I came back to Rock Island. You see, when a slave enlisted, that freed his wife. And our old boss was pretty fair, and he told her she was free and she could go anytime she wanted to. You see, there was U.S. soldiers all through there, so they had to obey the laws. Company E, 108th U.S. Volunteers is what I belong to. All colored troops went as U.S. volunteers. They didn't go by states like the white volunteers. We had Captain Tuttle. From Lieutenant Ump was white, but corporals and sergeants were of our own people. I was a corporal in Company E. My boss, William Martin Wilson, had about 60 slaves. Only 7 out of the family went. The others didn't go. All of the 7 were married but 2. I was married in 1859. Mr. Wilson owned about 900 acres. Tobacco was the main thing. He had blooded racehorses, different breeds, fine cattle, fine sheep. He was going pretty good, and he was in the state senate when the war broke out. He was the only child, and his folks left him all of this stuff. After I came back from the courses, the race courses, I just dealt with horses. He had stallions, and I looked after them. And he, the old boss, was a good horse doctor, and the trainer was a horse doctor, and so I learned to doctor horses. And when a neighbor's horse got sick, he came and worked in my place. Well, I went over to doctor his horse. And so the more I did, the more I studied and learned, and that's how I learned. I had made up my mind when I was a boy that I wanted to be a horse doctor. They would have a slave to learn most everything on their own farm: blacksmithing, carpentering, shoemaking. Everything was done by hand, no machines in those days. When I was a little fellow, they called me Charlie Washington. You know, that was a long time ago when George Washington was all the gold in. They asked, why don't they call you George Washington? But that didn't make any difference. My first name was Starks, you know. The name Wilson I take from my last master. So in other words, don't matter what you call me, I was a slave, I was a Stark, and I was a Wilson. I was born in 1836. I don't know the date exactly, but I was born in January. Sometimes they wrote our ages in their Bibles, but when we left, they wouldn't accommodate us that much to tell us. But my mother remembered that it was in January.